John of the Eye Patch, Chapter 4. Indeed, Real Magic. John pedaled urgently for the first block before settling into a slow coast as he tried to shake the memory of the jar of eyeballs from his head. No way those were eyeballs, he tried to convince himself. Was she a storyteller or was she a witch? Witches aren't real, he kept saying to himself. And they probably weren't pickled eyeballs either. Just some prop, something to scare him into believing her stories. Just like that eye patch was. A lie. By the time he rolled up his driveway and waved at Alyssa, he was sick to his stomach for believing the storyteller. How to save someone who's right there? He parked his bike and went inside. His dad was right. John realized he'd been taken advantage of by the storyteller. In one pocket, he still had his $10. He was sure he could find a pirate ship on Amazon. In his other pocket, he still had the eye patch. The lie of the eye patch made John angry, and he threw the eye patch into the kitchen trash. Dad walked past his dad's office, pausing to listen to his dad talk on the phone, using a lot of medical words like diagnosis and inoculation and the disease vector. John didn't really want to talk to anyone. Anyway, so he went up to his room, and he dutifully deposited his $10 on his bedside table before flopping down onto his bed, full of this morning's disappointment. Out of the summer boredom, he pulled out his pirate encyclopedia. The book fell open to the page from yesterday. Nassau. His dream about the city had felt so real. There had been none of those usual dreamlike wildness like flying or walking through walls. What if it is true? He wondered, wondering if he really had been chosen by the eye patch. Wonder if he was really able to travel through time? Nonsense, surely. But he could always try the eye patch back on and know for sure. The rumble of the garbage truck came through John's window. Trash day? Oh no, the eye patch! John dropped the encyclopedia and dashed out of his room. He took the stairs recklessly, 4 at a time, dashing through the living room to the kitchen, where he skidded to a halt. The trash was empty. He bolted outside, yelling, "Dad, stop, stop, stop!" His dad wasn't in the backyard or in the garage. John raced down the driveway to where his dad stood next to the trash can. The garbage truck grumbled away from their house. "Oh man, I'll never remember trash day," his dad muttered, wheeling the garbage bin back up to the garage. No way to know if it was real now, John surmised. Magic. Pfft. It would have made him the coolest kid in 5th grade. Now he was just like everyone else, only with a story he was too embarrassed to tell. To keep the what-ifs and might-have-beens out of his mind, he spent the day riding bikes and practicing soccer at George Washington Elementary with Alyssa. "Hey, whatever happened with that eye patch?" Alyssa asked during a break while they were at the water fountain. "You were right. It was just some scam," John said, not wanting to believe it. "Heh. John, you win some and you lose some," Alyssa said. "Look on the bright side. You didn't get kidnapped." John rolled his eyes. Like that would happen. She's just a storyteller. "Well, yeah, but did you see those fingernails?" Alyssa danced her fingernails in front of John's face. "They're just colorful," he said. "They're weird, John," Alyssa said between sips of water. "Whatever. At least it only cost you a couple bucks," Alyssa shrugged. He's just throwing money away, John thought with disgust. After water, they played on the playground where John showed off all of his parkour moves he'd been practicing all summer. The one he was currently mastering was called a swing-through. John pointed to a 3-foot square cut-out window in one of the playground structures. "I'm going to jump through that," he said. "Yeah, sure you are," Alyssa rolled her eyes. "That's a hole at least 3 feet off the ground, John. Just watch me." John ran for the wall at full speed. He jumped, he grabbed on to the edge of the window, and he pulled his knees up to his chest, and he swung his feet through the hole, kicking, so the momentum from his feet would pull him through to the other side, where he landed on his feet and stepped back around half the wall and his hands in the air in celebration. Alyssa clapped. Well done, Johnny boy. He showed her the rest of his moves. The cat jump, where he leapt to a wall and grabbed the top edge with his hands, while his toes struck the sides of the walls, and then he would run up the wall. He'd run straight up the wall and then be able to take 2 steps up the wall before he had to kick off and land. And the very cool triangle jump he had ran, kicked off one wall to turn direction and grab for a higher ledge on a different wall facing that. He fell on the last one all 3 times he tried. Finally, he gave up any further attempts while his knees started to ache from too many rough landings. It was a slow bike ride back home. Dad's first words when John entered the kitchen were, "You're late." He pointed at a whiteboard where John had written, "Alyssa, bikes, 12 to 2. John looked at the clock. It was 3:32, and he winced way past check-in time. "Sorry, Dad," he said. Dad chopped vegetables on the counter. "Could you take out the trash? I had to put some stupid spoiled leftovers in the bin. They're stinking up the place." The kitchen garbage indeed stunk of rotting food. John tied the bag off and he carried it out to the garage. When he opened the trash bin, he was surprised to see several white trash bags still inside. Suddenly he remembered his dad saying, "I never remember trash day." John dropped the bag of trash and he pulled the top bag out of the bin. He opened it and sorted through the slimy mess of yogurt lids, takeout containers, chip bags, orange peels, a burnt-out light bulb, and some not-so-shiny black and gray eye patch. Yes, his eye patch. He pulled the eye patch from the mess. It stunk now. He ran back inside. He ran through the kitchen. He ran to the downstairs bathroom where he scrubbed, and he washed the eye patch until all the filth from the trash was off of it. He sniffed it again and found it still smelled a little bit like salt water. He looked at himself in the mirror. Time to see if it's real. He was nervous as he pulled the eye patch on. Partly he was worried that he had washed the magic from it, or that maybe it never had magic to begin with, or worse yet, that it might be real. The eye patch slipped into place. He saw himself fade in the mirror, almost like he was turning into fog over a stream or some piece of steam. He blinked and he was staring at the sea. His eye patch was real indeed. He almost shook with excitement. He stood with open-mouthed wonder. Just as the last time he had visited the island, the sun was setting to the west, and only a few cottony clouds decorated the sky. He turned around and inspected the island. There were coconut palm trees close to the shore. Deeper inland, there were some spiny oak-like trees. "Oh boy, what are we looking for ye?" And John turned to see Kofi with his brightly dressed companion, Sean. "Yeah, we missed ye for a day, near finery." Sean's accent was so heavy, it was hard to understand. Both men limped towards John. "Oh, looky, he's wearing a painting, Kofi," Sean said. "No, that a flag made into a nice shirt," Kofi said. John looked down. He realized he was still wearing his Pirates of the Caribbean shirt. Sean touched the print on John's shirt, causing John to lurch backwards, away from the man's finger. "Feeling like paint," Sean said. "Lad, would it be paint or a flag?" "It's just a shirt. It's from Disneyland," John said. "What? What is Disneyland?" Kofi asked. "It's in Anaheim," John said. The two men exchanged a strange look and shrugged. "It's in Los Angeles. Well, it's near Los Angeles, California." "Oh, Spaniards." Kofi shook his head. "At least they be having some sense, and they be Catholic," Sean added. The Jamaican shoved his Irish companion in the chest. It looked to John that the argument would escalate to blows soon. He stepped away, explaining as he went, Please, excuse me. I have someone to see." The island was real. The eye patch somehow had transported John through time. He was in an actual pirate island, Nassau. That meant his purpose was real. He had been sent here to save someone. That Anne looked a lot like his neighbor Alyssa. No longer did it seem like a coincidence to John. He dashed to the magistrate's house. He banged on the large brass knocker several times. A matronly, ebony woman opened the door. "Good evening," she said. "Good evening," John responded. "What do you want?" Anne wanted to come. Anne wanted me to come over for dinner. I thought maybe tonight might be a good night. John gave his best smile. "Anne, you looking for Anne? Will she be in town?" "Thank you." John nodded at the woman and waved goodbye. He looked around as the sun dipped into the sea. There were torches lit near a cluster of buildings that were near the harbor. It didn't seem any more like town than the last time John had been there. He shrugged and he went down a dirt path towards the buildings he saw. The people he passed were of various sizes, shapes, and colors. Short, tall, thin, fat, red, brown, olive, and black. Some were women, but most were men. John paid less attention to the people out walking than he did to the distant mass of tall ships. A real-life pirate town. This was a dream come true for John. He glanced between the cluster of buildings in the harbor. While Anne was probably in one of the buildings, John convinced himself that there was a chance she was near the ships. And so that's where he went first. Shouts of "Avast! Yo-ho! A heave-to!" and more accompanied the work of the loading and unloading of several cannons, barrels, boxes onto 3 massed ships at the port. John ran around to the back where he could read the ship's name. The main ship, Queen Anne's Revenge. "That's Blackbeard's ship," John realized. He walked closer to the ship, captivated by every detail. A stripe of red along the hull, with 8 cutouts for cannons. Above that, 6 cutouts for cannons on the main deck. 14 cannons on one side. The front and the middle mast were both rigged for 3 sails, and John craned his neck to see the masthead. Someone collided with him from his eye patch side, sending John reeling. Glancing around, it could be one of a dozen of pirates working on the docks. As much as John wanted to stay and watch the ship, he realized there were no girls here. He's got to find Anne, he reminded himself. John left the docks in search of a cluster of stone buildings. One was a stable with donkeys and mules and a single white horse. Another was a bakery with an oversized brick chimney and several stacks of flour inside. And the most impressive was a building with a sign printed in English manuscript that said "Milliner," which featured an impressive selection of hats. Most of the people still about were moving towards 3 torch-lit buildings that seemed in competition to see which could generate the most noise. They seemed the most likely place to find Anne. As John approached the first of the 3 raucous buildings, he got an eerie sensation that someone was following him. He glanced over his shoulder but saw no one, and when he turned back towards forward, a large man blocked his path. "Hello?" the man said in an accent John couldn't identify. "What have we here?" "I'm just looking for Anne." John paused. "Would she have the same last name here?" he wondered. From the magistrates. Anne. Oh, let me restart that. "I'm looking for Anne." And then John paused. Would she have the same last name here? He wondered. "Anne from the magistrates." "I bet ye are, lad. Ye shirt, me likes it." The man grinned. You like my shirt?" John guessed at what he was trying to say. "Yar!" The man grabbed John by the arm and dragged him into a narrow space between 2 stone buildings, where another man waited with a club in his hand. "Boots, too," the club-wielding man said. Before John could comply with either man, something knocked him down from behind. He landed face first in some sandy dirt. Around him, boots scuffed. He heard slaps, punches, and a woman yelling, "You try this petty thievery again, and you'll be explaining yourself to Blackbeard." John's eyes burned from the dust and the sand. He blinked several times to clear them. The first thing he saw was a pair of slender pirate boots with brass buckles. A hand grabbed his arm and pulled him upward. He scrambled to get his feet under him. He looked up at a tender-faced pirate in a tri-cornered hat. The pirate seemed familiar to John, and he stared until he realized it wasn't a man, but it was a woman, and her hair was up, and her face was somewhat obscured from layers of dirt and grime on it. By the lines on her cheeks, and the cleft of her chin, and the warm squint of her blue eyes, he knew immediately who it was and blurted out, "Mom!"